theory underpinning co-production, gaining insights on the practical application of co-production, and discover how this approach can generate improvement. We're joined today by Dr. John Brennan, a GP and fellow and board member of ISQA. And John is based in Ballyhale Health Centre in Kilkenny. And I also like to introduce Anne Cody. Anne has worked with John on improving services within Ballyhale Health Centre. And then finally, we have QI TalkTime regular, Dr. John Fitzsimons, who is our clinical director in the National Quality Improvement Team and also a consultant paediatrician in Children's Health Ireland. So before we hear from our panelists, we have a number of housekeeping items just to bring to your attention. The dial-in number today is 01526 0058, and the event number is 183 025 9332 hash. And you can use your computer or the phone for audio. And some people find that the phone is better as a better option. So if you have any problems with sound, sometimes it's good to phone in. We'll have our chat box active. Feel free to add in lots of questions and comments and queries for our panelists. And we aim to make this session as interactive as possible. We'll leave lots of time for discussion. We will be recording this webinar and we'll make the slides available and the recording available on our website. And I'd like to bring your attention to a small survey that we do post the webinar, which will pop up after the event. And I would be grateful if you could complete the survey, as it helps us improve future QI TalkTime events. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to John and Anne to share with us their particular initiative. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Siobhan. I'm going to pull up a couple of slides just to anchor us and get us going. Can you see those okay? Super. Okay. For starters, my name is John Brennan. Thank you very much to the QI TalkTime team and the HSE for inviting Anne and I to be part of this session today. I suppose the first thing I'll kind of say about myself is that I'm not really an expert in anything, nor do I claim to be, but I certainly am an advocate for this approach. First and foremost, I'm a jobbing GP. Secondly, I'm an improver, and I try to work in the space where those two worlds collide primarily. I'm looking forward to introducing Anne in I suppose a more appropriate and detailed way in a few minutes' time through our discussion. But to begin with, I suppose I'd like to start with a little bit of the theory that underpins this area we're calling co-production. And I'm conscious that it might be a new term, a relatively new term for some of you, for some pretty kind of old ideas. But let's see what you make of that. After that then, John Fitzsimons, Anne and I will be having a discussion where we hope to sort of get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty and the messy realities of getting from that theoretical model into practice. And I think what you'll see is that learning about co-production in your frontal cortex today is one thing, but getting to a place where you can practice it and, more importantly, feel it in the more primitive parts of your brain, the more instinctive bits, I think that's where we'd like to go with you maybe today, and see how we might kind of prompt and encourage you to try some of the things that we've been trying in the recent past. So for starters, as Siobhan was saying, our learning objectives for today are to start by exploring some of this theory briefly. I really like to gain some insights into the practical application of this theory and how that sort of differs in the real world, and then discover, I suppose, how this can be transformative through our discussion in so many other ways as well, and a wonderful source of energy for improvement and change, particularly in difficult times. So to begin with, as this is a quality improvement kind of forum, or a quality forum, I've borrowed this slide from Paul Batalden, and what it illustrates, I suppose, hopefully, is where we are with this co-production piece. So if we take the evolution of quality and quality improvement as starting with what we call Q 1.0, or the first part of the quality movement, which was all about kind of thresholds, minimum standards, accreditation, inspection, kind of guidelines. How can we ensure or assure that minimum specifications are made? I think that's really where the quality sort of journey begins. And through then this period of kind of quality 2.0 and improvement, where we've worked through organization-wide systems and borrowed from other industries like engineering and human factors and reliability theory, this idea that we can sort of shoot for the stars and put an aim right out there that we should be aiming for to improve towards. That has been what I have come to know as sort of quality 2.0, to this area now where we're moving into this era of quality 3.0, or where co-production maybe most appropriately sits. And what this is all about is realizing the latent value that is out there from and for all of us as healthcare providers, but also the people we work with in realizing health. People we sometimes call patients, when they're sick or when they're ill, but people who more importantly have wonderful perspectives, energy, and most importantly, ideas that can help us solve some of the hardest problems we face today. And this is built on a service dominant logic. So we're not producing or providing healthcare, on a conveyor belt and pushing out a product, but we're creating something between two people coming together. And that's something that we can share ownership of, whether that's in an individual consultation or whether that's up at the systems level when we're looking for improvement. I like to think of kind of the alignment of these three Qs as it's not one or the other, but it's all three together. And in a funny sense, Q 1.0 and Q 2.0 are parts of the same spectrum, a minimum and a maximum that we can aim for. Q 3.0 or co-production, though, I think takes us in a different dimension. So all of a sudden we're looking at a third dimension of volume and value that we can realize together. For a lot of people, I suppose the term person-centered care may be a little bit more familiar. I like the Health Foundation's description of person-centered care as being care that's personalized, coordinated, enabling, and delivered with dignity, compassion, and respect. And I especially like it when you, bring in the patient perspective, such as Valerie Billingham's famous quote, "Nothing about me without me." But I'm not convinced, or I'm not sure that this type of thinking or this model is really enough. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a couple of minutes. How this idea or this kind of sense of person-centered care is different in a way to co-production, and maybe leaves us a little bit short of where we could be in terms of unleashing that value I've been talking about. Why is person-centered care important? Why is it valuable? Well, there's loads of different reasons. I mean, not least that it improves kind of standards of care and people's ability to care for their own illness, less ED visits, better adherence to treatment plans, higher motivation levels and satisfaction levels, the opportunity to share decisions based on someone's individual or personal values, choosing potentially less costly and invasive interventions. And then I suppose crucially for a lot of us through this COVID pandemic and at other kind of stressful and busy times, it's a way to boost morale, that connection that we can create and we can make, with those for whom we try to produce a good service. As we'll talk about in a little bit, that can be a wonderful way to unleash energy. and create a lot more joy and purpose in our work. And that's something that can, I think, really sustain us. So what's the difference then between person-centered care and co-production? I was organizing a session a couple of years ago at a meeting for and kind of with Paul Batalden, and I was really hoping he wanted to talk about co-production. I wanted to sell the session out. I said, co-production, people aren't going to know what this word means. I want to fill the session, you know, person-centered care, that they're the buzzwords of the moment. Paul, can I call this session something about person-centered care, and we'll talk about co-production as a way of bringing people in? He said, John, absolutely not. We're talking about two different things. And I wasn't sure I understood really, you know, what the difference was. You know, are we not on the same sort of spectrum of what we're trying to achieve here? So we said the two biggest differences that you must keep in your mind between person-centered care and co-production are, number one, design thinking. Person-centered care doesn't have to include design thinking. It often will if you're working on quality improvement work, but it doesn't have to. Co-production will always have design thinking. There'll always be an element of discovery, definition, development, and delivery, if you take the 4 Ds. But the second thing he said is that co-production is about equal agency. Agency being both courage and encouragement, and power, actually distributing power equally to own and create ideas and the changes that come from there. So as we move through the next couple of slides on co-production, I want you to think about that subtle difference. I have two definitions of co-production to show you. The first comes from Paul Batalden himself, where he describes it as the interdependent work of patients and professionals to design, there's that word again, deliver, assess, and improve the relationships and actions, and that relationships word is important, that contribute to the health of individuals and populations through mutual respect and partnership that leverages each participant's unique assets, expertise, and actions. Okay, so it's a nicely comprehensive definition, but I'm sure you'll agree, as our team always thinks, it's maybe a little bit wordy and tricky to pick out the practical bits. So Anne and I recently were writing an abstract for something else, and we found a new definition that I think we kind of like, from Dr. Erin Walker, who's actually a patient representative herself. And she describes co-production as simultaneously an activity and an approach and an ethos, which involves members of staff, patients, and the public working together, sharing power and responsibility across the entirety of a project. And I think in a sense, this idea of ethos and maybe the values behind that, you know, is a really crucial part of actually practically getting into that co-production space. Because, you know, you're moving into uncharted territory, you have to really know you want to go there and be prepared to find a way to get there. Another slide then that I've borrowed from Paul Batalden relates to the 4, as we would kind of see it, the 4 practical knowledge streams that go into co-production. What are the inputs? The first is the patient, or the person we sometimes call a patient when they're sick. Their aims, their lived reality and experiences, their social supports, their resources, their place in a community, and their sense of a healthcare service and the way that works and practices. The as-is system as a second input, the work as is done, not the work as we would like it to be or the work as we imagine it, but the actual journey that people must navigate in seeking to optimize their health by accessing and co-producing service. The third stream is science-informed practice. So moving away maybe from the firm boundaries and lines of evidence-based medicine towards science-informed practice, how that becomes a co-production input and its validity. And the last stream then is the professional. Or the person who's sometimes a professional, but also a person outside of that too. Their lived reality, supports, resources, and values. Look out for these knowledge streams during our discussion in a few minutes. I expect you'll be able to see them and pick them out. one of the kind of key practical kind of tools, certainly that I think is very useful in thinking about how co-production differs and where it is the ladder of co-production. So what you'll see with this ladder is there are lots of different ways for healthcare as a system or healthcare professionals to interact with non-professionals or patients, or people who are active in receiving care. And it exists on a spectrum from coercion or education, which is sort of unidirectional, doing to people who are passive recipients. This is often more in the product dominant logic, as we said before, rather than the co-building of a service, through the doing for piece in the middle, which is often where we need to start when we want to build a relationship for co-production. And that can be around kind of, more active ways of informing, consulting with, and engaging people about different aspects of their health on a one-to-one basis, or how a service could be improved, right up to the top of this ladder of co-design, where we can share that design piece, and not just share the design piece, but share the design. And then, as we said before, the agency, the ownership, the courage and the power of what that design can change, what that design can deliver. Then we're at the top of the ladder in this co-production space. For us in Ballyhale, it's been quite a journey over the last couple of years into the space we're in now. We started out with a very real kind of clinical problem and issue that most general practices around the country are facing, and that's prescribing rates for sedative medications, benzodiazepines and sleeping tablets. I was shocked to learn a number of years ago that Ireland is one of the worst performing countries in the developed world on prescribing these potentially harmful medications in large quantities to huge numbers of people. It's been incultured, unfortunately, in how people think about sleep in this country. And what we decided to do as a practice was to work on this. And we sort of said, okay, we've got one of the hardest problems we could possibly face. How are we going to make headway and get there? And we adopted a quality improvement methodology and approach where we tested and tried lots of different things. But it quickly became apparent in our conversations with our patients that we were going to need to unleash, again, as we said, a new value stream in terms of ideas and energy to help us get better at improving this difficult problem. And in that sense, we built solutions around sharing decisions with patients one-to-one, and we're very kind of sensitive to listening to what mattered most to them. But at an organizational level for the project, we also invited Anne and another two non-clinical team members onto our team to help give us those insights, that energy and that impetus to do an even better job at improving this. And their insights have been totally invaluable to us. Again, we started out somewhere in the middle of that ladder, engaging or consulting, through to, in this project, quite a bit of co-design around the different interventions that we tested, used and learnt from. And then since this project continues always, but alongside this project, then the other things we're working on now, we're far more focused on getting into that shared ownership space. So for this project, we've had a good degree of success so far, where we've reduced our prescribing these medications by over 50% at a time when research would tell you that sleeplessness in this country has gotten worse for loads of reasons over the last year. Our prescribing rates for these medications continue to fall, and the other ways we help people to sleep, I suppose people reflect very positively towards us that they work well as an alternative without the downsides of these medications. But maybe we'll hear a little bit more about this project as we kind of get our conversation going. So I suppose that's where I want to leave the theory piece, if that's okay. There's loads more we could say about it, but I'm hoping what's going to be more useful for everyone on the call today is going to be this look at the nitty-gritty, messy reality, practicalities of getting from what sounds like a wonderful idea into a space where we're not just thinking about it, we're doing it and learning quickly from it to get better at it. I'll stop my screen share there then, Siobhan. and
Great.
we might open the conversation.
Yes, we just have a comment from Anne Lawler from 2020 Q11 Ireland, and she's very interested to hear the discussion today, and that she has actually run a co-production workshop in 2019, and they're in continuous engagement on this topic. So it's really important to them, and so they were saying that that co-production is really important to us. Our expertise and lived experience are crucial to making these processes work. So that's just a comment from Anne. Is there any questions there for the panel? And maybe, John, can I ask you about how you approached Anne to join the team, and or maybe ask Anne how John approached you to join the team? How did he describe it, and did you know what you were getting involved with?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to let Anne come in on that question, Siobhan, because she's able to tell this story better than I am. Anne, you might even like to kind of share a couple of other bits about yourself, even as you get into that question.
Oh, well, I suppose I'll just answer the question because that's what's easiest for me at the moment. So I just got a phone call from, not directly from John. I actually, I don't know who rang me, but somebody from the practice asked me to go to a meeting. And so just curiosity, I don't even know what information I was given over the phone. But when I turned up at the meeting, I think there were 3 GPs there, or I don't know, 3 or 4, but definitely 3 GPs there from the practice, including John and myself and 3 other patients from the practice. And we were talked about co-production. Now, I really don't remember any of the details of that. All I remember, what I really remember, is that there was talk about the sleep project. And I just bowled over by the honesty from, actually, I think it was Richard Brennan, who said, you know, we're really not doing very well here. We thought we were doing a lot better. And actually, we're really not doing well at all. And we really need to do better. And it was just that honesty, because I always associate health initiatives with organizations with, do you know what, covering your arse, you know, just not, don't let people know, you know, put on a brave face, don't, whatever you do, don't tell the truth if things are not going well. And that just struck me. And to this day, that's what I remember of that meeting. And I just kind of thought, like, I did have a great interest in working in health areas, and it sounded to me a bit like an adventure. I didn't know what I was being asked to do. I didn't know where I was going. It struck me as well that they were suggesting a meeting every Monday morning from 8:30 till 9 o'clock in the surgery. And it just struck me. And the people I spoke to, they said, what do you mean 4 or 5 doctors that want to listen to you for half an hour every Monday morning? And I said, I don't know why, but that they were investing that time in listening. And so those were things that struck me. And I just remember telling my neighbor who is in her 90s, and she said, what do they want to listen to you for? and so it was, for me, it was an adventure. I hadn't a clue what I was getting myself in for.
Sure.
And it hasn't been an easy ride either.
And John, how did you plan those meetings then? What kind of, how did you have an idea of how those meetings should run?
Yeah, so I suppose for us, as Anne said, I mean, you know, being honest and upfront about being faced with what we saw as being a very difficult, and some doctors in the practice were saying impossible, entrenched problem. We were looking for kind of, you know, all the keys we could find to sort of unlock this. And I remember saying to the other GPs at one stage, I said, you know, once we go here, you know, once we go into this space, if we're going to do this properly, then there's a commitment involved here, not just a time commitment, but a commitment to honesty and vulnerability and humility and curiosity. And the other GP said, okay, well, let's just give it a go. We don't have to have all this figured out before we start. So, that's exactly what we did. We started before we were ready, in a sense. We pulled together some data, some information on our prescribing, sat down with Anne and a few other patients of the practice and said, listen, we're in trouble here, and we would love if you would consider helping us. And from there, we were kind of moving into meetings where part of it was about improvement methodology and applying kind of good improvement principles, but a much bigger part of it was about listening actually taking the time to kind of get to know one another and build relationships through trying to solve difficult problems together.
Great. And I don't know whether John Fitz, do you have any questions for
Oh yeah, Siobhan, I'm curious like you, because I think it's such an interesting, story, and I suppose maybe my question to Anne and John is has it always been plain sailing? Has it always been easy to have these conversations, and what happens when it's not?
So Anne, I don't know if you want to take that one first or if you want me to take that one first, but we could maybe start with each saying how many times we've nearly walked away and thankfully slept on it and not, and how much stronger I suppose that has made us. You might have some insights to share there, Anne.
Well, I remember sending you an email or it was a phone call, but I remember saying, if I send you an email after 10 o'clock at night saying I'm walking away from this project, I've had enough of it, then just hold it. I might get back to you in the morning, and having slept on it, I might say it's okay, I can continue. But we have been in some very hard places. I've often felt really stupid after a meeting for what I've said or the way I've said it, thinking I've hurt people, I've been undiplomatic. Why couldn't my husband has this kind of great saying. He says, Anne, you missed a golden opportunity to keep your mouth shut. Do you know what? And so after a meeting, I have gone to bed at night and really had difficulty sleeping, because what has happened in the meeting has caused me such turmoil inside. And it's usually not what other people have said, but well, maybe the reaction that I've had to that and how I judge myself. So it has been really, really hard. And also because from the first, this word co-production has been at the center, and I'd be saying, what is co-production? And then I'd have an idea of what co-production is, and I'd want to nail it. And I'd be saying, okay, so you think that's co-production? That's not co-production. We did not come up with that idea as a team. That is not co-production. We're not there yet. So I set myself this standard, and I've nearly said everybody a standard that we have to live to. So I think I get the idea that I'm a demanding person, a negative person. So I've lived through all of this.
Great.
But I have loved it.
Great.
I think, yeah, I mean, I like on the clinical side, I think a big part of this is that we're not interested in tokenism. And it's very easy where there's this huge power imbalance to choose where you stand on that co-production ladder and say, this is where we're going to stand and this is where we're going to stay. And if we don't like what we hear or it's not going that well, then we can just turn the other way and shut this process down. And you might say a few words in a few minutes about kind of that sort of fear that this can end at any time. But a huge part of all of this for us, and one of the ways we know we're kind of going in the right direction, it is the challenges that this way of working produces. Because if people were sitting quietly on the other side of the room, or at the moment on the other side of a Zoom call, and not saying what was really on their mind or what mattered to them because they felt there was a risk in how they would be seen, particularly as an active patient in the practice, if there was going to be some punitive aspect to it, then we're not in a space where we can create well. We're not in a space where people are going to bring new ideas, are going to risk putting that new idea out there or that perspective. And we are incredibly lucky to have the non-clinical team members, that we have, who have bought into this way of working with us, who have felt out and tested with us how we're going to get to this psychologically safe space where we can, you know, be maximally creative and productive. And we're wonderfully lucky that they are, you know, feeling that safety to hold the whole process to account. Because without that, you know, then the powerful can ride roughshod over the whole thing. And it's not really co-production in anything other than name then. And I suppose that's a huge kind of part of what makes us tick. And even though we have those difficult days and we don't all agree on everything, we know that we're all pulling in the same direction, and we can find ways where we build on each other's you know, values, ideas, and creative potential.
And John, there's a comment there in the chat box saying that it's slow, it's laborious, it can be, you know, it can be a difficult process. And how do you think it can be made easier? Is there anything that can be done to make the co-production a little bit easier?
I'm gonna turn that over to Anne's perspective there, Siobhan. You know, if that's okay, because I mean, we don't have the, you know, we haven't written the book on this. You know, we don't have the authoritative knowledge. All we have is our own experience and context and stories on what's worked and what hasn't worked for us. You know, before Anne, you come in on this, I mean, I would say, you know, listen early and a lot. You know, to what's happening as you commence this process, because I think getting off on the wrong foot can definitely be a way to delay things further. But it does take time. But relationships take time, you know, as we all know. What do you think, Anne? Maybe I'm talking through my hat there.
Well, I do that all the time anyway. So you have your cup of tea there. I didn't think it would be professional to have my cup of tea. I've got my cup of tea going cold down here on the floor.
It's been a busy morning, Anne.
So, first, Siobhan, the word laborious kind of, I thought, is this laborious? What does that mean? That sounds like it's kind of a bit boring. So that's not a word that I would associate with co-production. That's not a word I associate with my personal experience of co-production. Making it easier, again, it makes me laugh. You know, there is nothing easy about this, but it's so worthwhile. It's hard, but all the way through, there's things that delight you. You know, you have conversations, and you go through the hard bits, and then you have a conversation with somebody, and you think, oh my God, this is so good. Like, there is no. For all that this has been one of the hardest projects I've been involved in, I know my life is so much better on this team than off it. You know, it brings me life, it brings me challenges. I feel exhilarated. I feel I'm at the coalface. So there's nothing easy about it, but there's life along the way. And it's around the relationships that you build. Now, John said, you know, in a sense, you know, the clinical members do have the ability, the authority to pull the plug on this. And I would say it is only in the last couple of months that I have realized that the plug is not going to be pulled. I've just accepted that the plug is not going to be pulled on this project. You know, we've gone too far. The relationships between the team are at this stage too strong. And like we're a real solid team now. That's what I feel. It's a solid team, and we're in a really good place to continue with.
And Anne, can I pick up on a couple of those, you know, points? I suppose maybe building on Siobhan's question there. You know, it seems that this is, in many ways, and from talking to yourself and John, this is not a linear kind of process. You know, I think you obviously had some success with the sleep project, but in many ways, you know, what you're doing at the moment is building those relationships rather than looking specifically at problems to solve. Is that fair to say?
I kind of think the sleep project is a little bit of a red herring here. That was not a co-production project. You know, a lot of the work that had been done on that, you know, had been done before any new members were invited to this team. That project was the doorway to co-production.
Sure.
So in a way, it's a little bit of a red herring, and it might set up the expectation that we're here to sort out clinical problems, difficult clinical problems. Well, if we if we have some miracles, we'll share them with you. But at the moment, we don't have them. But what we are doing is these relationships that we're building, this trust that we're building, the listening, and it can seem like we're building them between clinical and non-clinical members, but that's not so. I am building the relationships of trust with other people who are non-clinical members. I can see the relationships of trust being built between clinical members. It's not a division of two parts. It's a division of many parts. Yeah. And we have alliances in different directions depending on what the project is.
And can I ask, just I'm curious as to just even the language you're using there, the clinical and non-clinical members. How was that? Was that something that you arrived at easily, or how did you come to that decision to call each other that name, or is that how you address kind of your roles, or tell me a bit more?
Well, do you want to say something, John?
No, you go ahead on and answer that one if you like, because I think you've got
John as well. Yeah.
Well, for me, labels can be important or they cannot be important. And certainly when I first joined this team, I felt very much that I was a patient member. It didn't matter what label was put on it. You could have called me, you could have called us anything. But I felt my position was less than other people's position. But I have to work out whether that was something I brought. To what extent did I bring that to the team with the baggage of my past experience? And to what extent it was in the team as a result of attitudes within the team? It's a long time since I care what label people put on this. I actually feel an equal part in that team. I feel fully equal. And I remember the very first time that I felt I made a choice to take a leadership role. And I sent out an email asking team members to reflect on something and give me their opinion. And I thought, this is an email normally that John would send, somebody else would send, asking, what do you think of this? What's your comment? And I thought, am I going to send it? I thought, yes, I'm going to send it. And it was as if I had chosen to take a step. At that day, I chose to step into a leadership role. So the labels, they are important if you feel that a label empowers you or disempowers you. I think it's important for other people to know that it's not all doctors on the team, that the doctors here have reached out to people who are not doctors. And so somehow we need to say that. But so somehow you need to say it's of interest to people that there are not doctors on this team.
Yeah.
But once you know that, you know what?
There's no, I don't think there's any kind of perfect way to kind of call it. I mean, we kind of auditioned a few options, as I recall, Anne, at the time, again, tested to see how they kind of fitted, over a weekend, and let everyone sort of try them on. And I remember one of the ones we tested was, from the NUCA system of care in Alaska, the customer owner, which caused a lot of kind of cringing, at the time, and said, no, that's not, what we are. But like, as you said, I think the key thing is, what we call each other opens up other possibilities. And I think we're just about ready to drop the clinical and the non-clinical labels. Yeah. We certainly have them dropped when we're working together. I think it's only really when we're communicating now about what we do that we stick them back in there so that it can bring people closer to what it is that we're doing. One kind of quick point on the question before was around the sort of project work. Are you focusing on co-production, or are you focusing on projects, whatever? I think doing work around projects and having that shared purpose or that shared focus is a wonderful way to build the relationships, because we test out lots of different ways of working together and interacting and learn lots of new bits about one another. So I actually think each approach complements the other. It's lovely to have that focus. And again, coming back to that idea of psychological safety, having a shared meaning or expectation is a core part of kind of starting that, I think, feeling you're standing in the same place, looking at the same mountain, not on opposite sides of it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a comment there in the box that clinical and non-clinical suggests a very medical model as opposed to a holistic approach. Does the co-production team view the approach as holistic in any way?
I don't know, Anne, if you'd like to answer that, or I can.
The end of it suggested a clinical approach. Sorry, I missed the question.
The question was, clinical and non-clinical suggests a very medical model as opposed to a holistic approach. Does the co-production team view this approach as holistic in any way?
That's interesting. I can't speak for the team. That's, I can speak for myself.
Yes.
And I try in my life, I try to have a holistic approach to my whole life. So personally, I visit the doctor as little as possible. And I take everything they say to me in a consultation, maybe with a pinch of salt, and I can say, do I really need this? Is there another way? Can I do this? Can I hold on to this prescription for a week or 2 or 3 to see if I'm getting better without it? Like I think, is there anything I personally can do to help other team members feel part of this team? So I might ring somebody up and say, how are you getting on? So for me, like this is whole in my life. This takes a whole place in my life. And I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I mean, as one of the clinicians then in the team, what I'd say is we're, really blessed to be working in general practice, because what we do in so many senses is try to be as holistic as possible. It's about community and context and, all the strengths that kind of communities bring. And in a sense, what we're building is a community inside of a community, that can look outwards, but also reflect things inwards. I mean, recently we were doing an exercise on kind of mapping mental health resources that people can use in the practice to build on to kind of part of our website. And everyone was able to kind of pitch in with the different aspects of mental health that come into play in a community. Everyone can kind of bring that to the table based on their own perspective. And another, I suppose, example, in a sense, is that we lost a team member a couple of weeks ago. And top of the agenda then when that happens is, how do we thank this person properly for everything they've given us? And it was lovely to get an email last night from that team member to say she had received her camellia, and every time she walks past it in her garden, she'll be thinking now about co-production and the growth of our team and those other aspects of kind of life that are so important to all of us. I mean, there's many the co-production meeting that starts with a conversation about who's done what in the garden over the weekend.
Very good. There's just a few comments from Patients for Patient Safety who are in the audience, and they were saying that the first few meetings can always be daunting as a patient advocate, and until they feel like they're making a contribution. What was the point when Anne felt like an equal member, so she could play more of a leadership role? And is there any guidance, tips and tricks for us to speed up the process to feel part of a team? Don't know whether, Anne, you'd want to respond to that.
Well, we do a lot of talking outside of team. There's something very different about the work we are doing. In the past, if you're on a team, on a committee, you kind of maybe you have your jobs, you go back, but we talk outside these team meetings. And I just looked at a quick count of how many emails I'd got from John. And 75 emails I have still got, apart from the ones, and a lot of these are reflective emails, are kind of, I know things about people's families. So we have been building up relationships. But an important email from me was when I had really, I think I'd given out, I'd been upset about something that had been said, and I let it all out. John heard it. And he said, I'm really glad you could say this because it means you are feeling psychologically safe. And it's this business of feeling safe, in that team. So I can say what I have to say in the way and I'm learning, I hope, to say things in a way that causes least collateral damage. But I absolutely know that I am on that team, and nobody is going to nobody wants me off it. I am, or they want me with my gifts. They want me with my challenges, and I like every single person on that team. And I know that we like each other.
And can I just ask you? There are other members of the team. So did you support each other? How did you kind of interact with each other, with the other and so-called non-clinical members of the team? Was that a help that there was more than just yourself on the team?
It was absolutely essential.
Yeah.
And I want to say that, John mentioned that we lost a team member, and we did want to thank that lady, but we were sad. Do you know what? There was it wasn't just that we said goodbye. We were really sad, and we are sad that she has left. And we are kind of hoping that she will maybe, we're open. If anytime she says, look, I'd like to come back, the door is open. So I just want to say that we were sad that we lost her. But we have always kind of rerung each other up. We've had many team meetings, and the sort of things we did, in the middle of COVID, when we really felt, one day we felt, those people working in that practice, I'm trying to say not doctors, call them those people, they're tired. And we arrived with bread and stuff and flowers and said, look, here, just to lift you today, because we appreciated the work that they were doing and we wanted to support them. But yes, it is important to have more than one person, and it is important that we share. I would love to hear, I've always wanted to hear from other people in my position who are working in co-production, and I've searched for people, but I haven't found anybody in terms of health practice at a kind of health centre level.
Yes, no problem. And we have a question here, I suppose, for everybody, really. Do you have any suggestions on how to promote co-production? I suppose this webinar is contributing towards that, but how would we promote it within, for example, the HSE? So is there any advice on how to promote it?
So again, I don't know if we're necessarily the experts on this. I mean, our philosophy is spread what we learn in as many different ways as we can, organically, networked, talking, meeting, chatting. That's the way we try to do it. And we do it that way for two reasons. Number one, because we think, that the joy we get from this and the purpose it gives us and how much value it adds can help other people too. And that's a wonderful thing to sort of share, pass on the good stuff. But we also do it as a way to kind of sustain what we're doing. So, always moving forward, always expanding the boundaries, always feeling there's more that we can learn. And Anne and I are looking forward to reading back through the chat here to see what we learn as well. That's a wonderful way for us to kind of sustain the initiative. And as Anne was saying there, I mean, in a clinical sense over the past year, it has been hard to create the time for this, but it gives back so much more than it takes for all of those different reasons. I mean, this process, its challenges, the excitement, the energy that goes in, keeps us going, Siobhan. The other thing I was going to say, just to kind of add to what Anne said about that question from Patients for Patient Safety, one of the things we did early on was we opened a Google document that we could share as a team. And in there, we asked everyone to write in what their aim for all of this was. Okay, what they thought it was going to achieve, why they were there. And we also asked them to commit to paper 3 values that they thought were going to be essential in keeping it together and keeping it going. And the values, interestingly, between everyone, almost repeat. You see teamwork, you see humility, you see curiosity, you see learning, you see open-mindedness. All of these values, I think, go into, as Anne said, creating this psychologically safe space. And one of the things we've worked very hard on as well, and there's a really nice model that Amy Edmondson has. She's the author of The Fearless Organization, which is a wonderful book on empowering everyone to get involved and to be part of that process. But she talks about this 3-step model. It starts with sharing purpose. Yeah, sharing meaning, as we said, are we standing in the same place? The second thing is inviting that participation and doing that in a way that means everyone's voice can be heard. And then the last bit, and maybe most importantly, is then showing ways to appreciate what it is that you hear. And I think at the essence of all of this, if you want to accelerate this process, you know, with people, you need to share the vulnerability around aims, values, and challenges to create that shared sense of where we are and where we want to get to, and then use ways to, you know, speak to people and listen to people, appreciate what you get back, and do that as effectively as you can. And I think that is how you maybe accelerate what you can gain from your whole team, whatever it looks like.
Okay, thanks, John. There's just a question around, is there a foundation that is needed to build the process of co-production? Is there anything that needs to be essentially in place to start this process?
I think it starts with will, and you know, and ideas. I think a foundation can come. If you look at what's happening in the UK, there's a huge move across lots of different public services for more co-production. And there's a good website there called Never Mind the Beep, We Want Co-Production. So you know, there's a grassroots kind of movement here, and there are bodies there. We don't have anything exactly like this in Ireland yet. We're islands that we, you know, that we want to kind of connect up and kind of build a movement around. But a focal point would be nice, I think, wouldn't it, Anne?
Oh, yeah. That's distracting. I don't know.
Very good.
Can I just ask a quick question there, John and Anne? You know, do you think other patients, you know, who are not involved in the co-production group directly have noticed or, you know, seen any changes as a result of what you've been doing? Or John, do you think the other staff members, you know, have noticed anything different?
I think definitely, you know, in terms of certainly kind of, if you go back to what our approach would have been around that sleep project and how we incorporated the views, albeit we weren't strictly in a co-production place from the start. I mean, previous conversations around kind of sleeping tablets would have been, you know, maybe inconsistent at times, and language like addiction may have been used, and, you know, there might have been stigma kind of attached there. You know, in working with Anne and the rest of the team, the model we adopted instead was much more around, you know, sharing decisions, and not the shutters are coming down, it's our way or the highway, not doing 2 or 4, but doing with, you know, at that individual level as well. So you know, I would say almost certainly in that sense, in managing those kind of trickier, more difficult conversations at a one-to-one level, I would hope that you know, a lot more people have been touched by this than just the people kind of who are kind of forming the changes. And then in a wider sense, in the practice, I mean, we've been in the process over the last couple of months of building a website together where we've split into mini teams between, you know, doctors and our non-clinical team members, and then wider kind of members of the practice team in sort of forming those groups. And we know through those conversations that's brought up lots of new questions and ways of thinking, and you know, ways of approaching the problems that we need to continue to face into and solve, and lots of problems that haven't even declared themselves yet. But we know that we have, you know, an approach here that we think can build solutions iteratively and sensibly together to tackle the hardest things. And I think knowing we have that is a wonderful kind of place to be starting from.
And Anne, do you think this has influenced the community, you know, the work that you've been doing?
Listen, the other day I was walking, I was actually picking up litter, because we're doing litter picking around. And I met a young girl who is on her school council, she's a 5th-year student. And she and I had a conversation for about an hour, and it was around listening, and it was around kind of how you select new people, and how, you know, you don't select people like you because you miss the challenges and the gifts of the people that you. And I had this amazing conversation with her, and so I really felt she influenced because we actually just wrote a new recruitment process paper, and she had a big influence on that. And now I'm thinking, do you know what? there's people like that. They will never come to our meeting because of school commitments. And maybe we can go in and have conversations. You know, when you're enthusiastic about what you're doing and you start talking to other people, then you make connections in the community. And you don't know what the benefit is. I actually do not know. I know I came away from that conversation lifted, and I hope she did too. So you can't judge, you can't know what the benefits are.
Yeah.
You only get a glimpse in it. You know what the benefits are to you. You work on certain values. You work on the belief that what you're doing is producing good. And then you let the good happen, you know.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Fantastic.
John, did you want to come in there, John? Oh,
No, I was just going to say, I know from talking to the other doctors in the practice that it has changed sort of hugely, and some of them I can see are chiming in the chat on different things as well. I can't keep up on all the comments, but you know, I know through the conversations I've had back from then and that listening, that it has changed how they're hearing, you know, what people say and what really matters and how you can share decisions. So, you know, even I was chatting to my dad last night as we were sort of finishing up in the surgery, and he was saying, you know, I've been doing this for more than 30 years in this same place, and I just didn't realize that there was this whole body of you know, of kind of wisdom and tacit knowledge and you know, the word we use for is value that's out there that was kind of untapped, that we're only sort of really just realizing now. And he was reflecting on how much energy that has given him after all this time, that he now realizes there's this huge area that I can move into and learn more and more and more about with more and more people, and the energy that gives is wonderful. You know, the last thing I'd say just about kind of learning about what our impact has been out in the community, it's been a difficult year for all communities, and I know particularly, you know, as well for our community in terms of connecting. So a lot of the conversations that might have been happening at the tea rooms or the post office, you know, or whatever, haven't been happening for the last year. But you know, a lot of what we've been trying to design around how the practice works in a quality sense and access sense in the website, we're hoping that that's going to help with some of that. And again, that's co-producing based on what a community feels its needs may be and how they can be met.
Great, thanks very much. Anne, do you want to say something?
Yes, I want to ask you, John, could you just mention everybody's name in Ballyhale so that they know, everybody knows who are the people that we've been working with, all the staff and all the team members, including the people, Alice and Marina, that are not currently with us. So would you mention everybody's name, please?
Okay, so a huge thank you to you, Anne, to Jim, to David, to Richard, to Marina, to Janine, to Stephen, who was in on a meeting, to Linda, to Eileen, to Anne, to Sinead, to Helen, who's just started with us as well, to Alice, did I say Alice already? And Marina, everyone that has been involved in all of this. You know, I think we can all thank, you know, one another, and let's keep going.
And John and Anne, I think you've got some homework for our participants today. Is that right?
Oh yeah, can I?
Yes,
will I share that, or
please.
do you have that, Siobhan?
No, if you want me to share it, I will. Yeah, no problem.
Whoever took share privileges away from me might give them back.
Naomi, can you let John share that?
Now, presenter, I have it. Don't worry. So again, in the conversations, you know, that we had about the session, I mean, my kind of homework before I let Anne give you her homework bit, you know, they're not take-home points, they're take-home questions that I want you to ask and reflect on, because, you know, we need to be in this listening space. You know, in how you're thinking about change and improvement now, not just with your patients, but also with your colleagues. Are you doing to, for, or with? Asking that question all the time. Are you really listening? And creating opportunities where you can listen deeper and better. And if you're listening but you're not hearing anything back, then is the space safe enough for people to say what they need to say? And then the last one from me is, what is your next small step to move further into this space, to test and to learn, and maybe with someone else? And what homework would you like them to try?
Okay, so John, what I want to say is that give yourself a clap on the back for doing the best that you can, and that believe that you've always done your best, and just feel good about what you've done, because you can't move forward, I think, if you're burdened with, you know, feeling that you can't or you haven't done. We all do our best all the time, though we do judge ourselves. So give yourself a clap on the back. But also then, I would kind of say the next step in co-production is go and have a conversation with somebody and really listen to somebody. And just, you don't have to make it hard for yourself. Pick somebody nearby. It might be somebody you live with, it might be somebody you work with, and it might be a stranger. But really listen to somebody's stories, where they're at, what they would like, what their experience would be, particularly maybe in the area of healthcare, and then reflect on that and just see where it leads you. But just be kind to yourself.
And finally, contact me if you'd like to kind of connect on any of this. My contact details are there, my Twitter, my email address, and I'd love to hear from you and get to know you as well. And you know, I know our team, you know, are very open-minded in finding new ways to get better at doing what we're doing and enjoying it at the same time.
Great. Well, I suppose to reflect some of the comments in the chat box, John and Anne, your energy and enthusiasm are wonderful, and it was great to hear from you today. And thank you very much for those in the audience there who participated, and thanks for your comments. And as John has said, you can contact him directly if you have any feedback or comments or suggestions for John and the team. So thanks very much to the panelists today. I really appreciate your time, and thanks as well, John Fitz, as well, for supporting this initiative. I just want to remind everybody that before closing out, that there's a survey just to complete. If you could do that as well, that would be great. It'll give us good feedback on future sessions for QI Talk Time. So if you wouldn't mind doing that before closing out. And then also just to share with you, the next QI Talk Time is going to be around measurement. So measurement for improvement. So we have Samantha Riley from the NHS Improvement Division, and we're going to look at making data count. So that's great. And then we also have communicating in a virtual world with Winnie Ryan and Peter Gillen. And then we're also looking at learning from COVID through stories on the 4th of May. So keep in contact with us, and thanks everybody for participating today, and thanks to our panelists again for their time. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.